I spent a whole lot of time online. I was ordering on Amazon. Anybody else do that? Ordering my Christmas gifts? So to me, it's a whole lot easier than going to the store nowadays. And it just made it easier for me, and especially with free shipping. So I went ahead and spent all this time ordering and some of the stuff. What I realized is that now, LaShawn, I live in Hawaii, and people don't want to ship here unless they're going to charge me $48 or something like that for a $5 item. So I'm trying to learn how to get the items shipped to me, and I'm paying through PayPal. I'm going to eBay, and I'm shopping there, and I got this list of things that I need to get that the kids want, and that I think they want, and I'm so preoccupied. And what do I get my parents? And maybe I'd search around for that. Before I know it, I've got like five hours into this, and I finally click send and make my payments and cross my fingers and hope for the best. And then I stopped and I realized that I wondered to myself, where's God in all of this? Because not one time had I ever sought God's direction or help or His input for my shopping experience online. And I thought about that joke. It's like, where's God? I thought about the Christmas season where we have Christ and Christmas, but where is Christ and Christmas so often in our own lives? How many of you have been out shopping already at the stores? At Target or the Wally Worlds or wherever you might go? Have you found Christ at the stores yet? Because I haven't. I'm still looking. I'm still looking for Him. In fact, His name has been removed out of Christmas, and now it's Happy Holidays. Or everything we do is about consumerism. Spencer, where's God in that? My concern, as I thought to myself, as I'm doing all this shopping, and am I leaving God out of the equation? This is a time of year where we're supposed to draw closer to God, not farther away, right? Closer to God. So, am I leaving God out of Christmas? Are you leaving God out of Christmas? I go online and I ask my friends, say, how many of you dealing with stressors this week? What are they? What are the stressors you're dealing with? And Tracy was real interested in my post because I had about 30 comments, 35 different inputs there. And I started tallying them up on a little memo sheet. And I realized that the number one concern and stressor that people have this time of year, which was when it relates to Christmas season, is that there's just not enough time to get things done. There's just not enough time to do what you need to do. And that was followed by the financial stress. There's not enough time and there's not enough money. And when there's enough money, there's not enough time, and there's enough time, there's not enough money kind of thing. And then the workload is still high. So that was another contributor to all that. That the work still goes on, and when am I going to get a break? And I got to do this now. If I don't go shopping now, then I'm going to run out of time, and I don't have the time, and I got to get these flights, and where, how am I going to, what do we do? Where's Christ in all that? That's what frustrates me. It's like, where's the Lord? Where's God? Where's God in all this? We get so stressed about the things that we have to get done to make other people happy, instead of taking time to make Christ happy. Giving these gifts to my kids, they're expecting it. Oh, it's Christmas. But have you ever even thought, why in the world do we give gifts? Why does that represent what we do? How does that represent the wise men that presented Jesus the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh that I talked about last week? Are we just doing it because we're caught up in consumerism? Or are we really reflecting Christ? And I, ladies and gentlemen, I'm guilty in getting caught up in that. So on my next slide, I want you to take you to Luke chapter number 4. I'm going to read to you verses 38 through 42. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Now it came to pass as they went that he, Jesus, entered into a certain village. And a certain woman named Martha received him under her house. And she had a sister called Mary, which was also sat at Jesus' feet. And Mary heard his words. But Martha was cumbered about with much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she come and help me. And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many, many things. But one thing's needful, and Mary hath chosen the good part, which shall not be taken can't remember anything else, you can remember Mary, Martha, and the Master, the three hymns today. I want you to look at Mary right now. And it says here in verse 39, she had a sister named Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his words. Let's talk about Mary just for a minute. Mary, the sister, the younger sister, where was she at? What's the Bible say? Where was she at, Nathan? She was at the feet of Jesus. What was her posture? What was her position? Go ahead, say it. Yeah, she's sitting there at the feet of the Master, the great servant. So here's Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to his words. The Bible says she was listening to his words and heard his words. So she was seated at his feet, a place of servitude, a low place of humility at the feet of Jesus. And it says that she heard his words. Now, let's check out Martha. Where was it said Martha was coming about serving and came to him and said a bunch of things to the Lord. Let's talk about Martha and not just her position, but her disposition. Where was Martha? She was what? She was distracted. Oh, maybe she was distracted. I mean, she was actually doing what the ladies did, what was customary back then. She was serving her guests. I mean, it was her house, by the way. If you ever had guests showed up, you feel like all of a sudden you got to serve them, right? Anybody hosting a Thanksgiving meal, or you're hosting a Christmas meal? I mean, people show up, you have to serve them. Can you imagine people showing up and you didn't offer them anything to drink, anything to eat? You just kind of sat down and plumped on the couch watching television. That's not what we do. So in essence, Martha was doing the right thing. She was serving the guest. The Bible shows, it puts some key words on here. It says she was cumbered about much serving. She was cumbered about. We don't use that word very much anymore, the word cumbered or cumbersome. But it means that she was distracted. It means overoccupied. It means busy. It means burdened. Anybody else ever been cumbered this Christmas season? Burdened, busy, overoccupied, distracted. That's Martha right there. Martha's going about doing all these things. She was the right thing to do, but she was very busy in doing it. Number one is because she had no help. Number two, it looks like they're the only two ladies there, at least in this story. And her sister sure wasn't of any help. So she's doing the right thing when according to, customs. But the Bible keys in on that word cumbered with much serving. So my question is, are you cumbered with chaos this Christmas, or is Christ in your Christmas? Am I cumbered with chaos this Christmas, or is Christ in Christmas? You take that word cumbered. Am I busy? Am I overloaded? Am I, like the word says, overoccupied, burdened down? Has Christmas and a hustle and bustle of that become more of a burden than a blessing? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to tell you that we've taken Christ out of Christmas. And we're Christians. Shame on me. Believe me, as the Lord, as I deliver this sermon, you're like, oh, preacher, take the knife out already. I'm going to tell you, the Lord preaches to me long before he preaches to you. Because I hear it from him, then I hear it when I get the word, then I'm writing it down. It's like 3 times. Now I'm delivering it. It's like 4 times. I'm getting it. So as I try to help us understand that, it's helping me as well, being covered about with Christmas. Now let's think about Martha's attitude here. When she comes to Jesus, and she said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Make her help me. That's what she says, right? Look at her attitude. Can you imagine how frustrated she was? Come on, ladies. You're the only one cleaning up the church, and everybody else is fellowshipping. Am I the only one doing this? I'm the only one picking it. You have a party at your house, and as soon as everybody leaves, all the kids go to their room, husband goes to the TV, they're sitting there cleaning handle everything. It's like, am I the only one? Where's all my help already? Some of you are pretty good, I know. I can imagine she was kind of frustrated because she wanted everything to be right. She wanted her guests to be blessed. She wanted them to feel welcomed in the presence of Jesus. But she was also a little perturbed that her younger sister wasn't doing anything. So sitting there at the feet of the master. What's wrong with her? What's wrong with that guy? How come he doesn't do anything in church? What's wrong with her? All she does is just sit there. What's wrong with this person? In fact, she was so fixated on what her younger sister wasn't doing that she stopped her job in order to address it. She got fixated on what Mary was doing. Let me say this. Your position in relationship to Jesus Christ will determine your disposition. I want to say it one more time. I like it. I think it's profound. Your position in relationship to Jesus Christ determines your disposition in relation to others. In other words, my position, the closer I am to Christ at the feet of Jesus, that determines my disposition, my attitude, my reflection, my interaction with other people. And the closer I am to Christ, the closer to His feet in submission, the easier it is in my walk with the Lord to relate to others. The more Christ-like I am during this season that you want to strangle people at the Walmart line. See what I mean? But my position in relation to Christ, my close proximity determines my disposition, how I act, how I respond, how I behave, the smile on my face, the attitude that I share. That determines my disposition when dealing with others. And that's how you keep Christ in Christmas, I believe, is when you're like Mary and you're situated, your position is at the feet of Jesus. Can I get an amen right there? What did Jesus say? Verse 41, He said, Martha, Martha. I can imagine. I don't know about you, but I make my Bible come to life when I read it. I can just imagine Jesus saying, Martha, Martha. I maybe put his hand on his shoulder. Martha, Martha, calm down. Calm down. He said, you're careful and you're troubled about many things. Martha. Can you see that? Can you see that infraction in his voice? The sympathy in his voice? The empathy in his voice? The urging in his voice? He says, Martha, you're cumbered about with chaos. And he said, you're missing out on the very thing that you need, Martha. You're missing me. You're missing out on me. He said, but one thing is needful, verse 42, and Mary hath chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. He said, you're careful about many things. He said, Martha, you're OCD about many things. He said, Martha, you're right dressed. Martha, you got everything perfect. Martha, you're the responsible one. Martha, I applaud you. But it's too much because you're missing out on the very thing you need. You're troubled about many things, Martha. You're stressed. You have anxiety. You're irritated. Your blood pressure's high. He said, forget all that because you're missing out on the greatest thing, which Mary figured it out. Are you with me, church? I'm driving it home because this is important. He said, Mary figured it out, but you haven't. He said, I'm not saying that you're not doing the right things. But sometimes doing the right things in the wrong way doesn't make it right. He said, you need to be at my feet. I'd rather you be at my feet learning than have the tea that you serve and the cookies that you bring. Because this is what's needful in life. There's a man named Joseph Scriven. He wrote home to his mother to offer her comfort, who was overseas. He wrote a poem to her. And the poem became a song that you have in your hymnals under your seats today. And it's called What a Friend We Have in Jesus. It's one of the most famous hymns in the world today. And it says this: what a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit, we give up. Oh, what needless pain we bear. Why? All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Listen to these words. He says, have we trials and temptations? The answer is, do you have trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? Yes. We should never be discouraged. Take them to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Check this out. Last verse. Are we weak and heavy laden, like Martha? He says, cumbered with the load of care. Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Take it to the Lord in prayer. He said, one thing's needful, Martha. It's not the Christmas lights or the Christmas trees, although that stuff's nice. It's not the packaging or the bows or the type of wrapping material you use. It's not how many gifts you have on your tree, Martha. It's not whether or not you got the right gifts for your kids or you chose the right gifts for your relatives or how much food you have on the table for the big Christmas dinner spread. It's not the parties. It's not the mistletoes. You're missing the point, Martha. He says this. Next slide. Do what Mary did. Stop, Martha. Stop. Sit and listen. That was her position. Stop. Sit and listen. Say that with me. Stop. Sit and listen. Stop. Sit and listen. I guess when you've had surgery on your back, you haven't had time to do that. What's it going to take for God to get you to stop, sit, and listen? For me, it takes some surgery on my back. Shouldn't have to come to that. But you find out in your times, on some of the most difficult struggles of your life, are the time when your position is closest to the Master. That makes sense? Sean is shaking her head. The times when you go through the most in life is the time that I find out that I seem to walk a little bit closer with God because I need Him more. In this Christmas season, I want to have Him not because I have a back that's healing. I want to have Him because I'm putting Christ in Christmas. Stop, sit, and listen. Charles Wesley had that in mind when he wrote, "Oh, that I could forever sit like Mary at the Master's feet. Be this my happy choice, my only care, delight, and bliss, my joy, my heaven on earth be this, to hear the bridegroom's voice." Psalms 46, verse 10, the author David said, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God. Now turn over to John chapter 11. Go to the next slide, please. John chapter 11. Let me read you this. This is another story, another great story, again, about these two sisters, Mary and Martha. And this is at a time when their brother Lazarus is sick, and later on in the chapter, he actually succumbs to death. He dies. But let me show you that it seems to me that the instructions given to Martha did not settle in. And perhaps it took the death of her brother for her to realize what was important in life. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. His brother Lazarus was sick. Remember, last week I was talking about the gift of oil. And Mary took that alabaster box of ointment, a wage of $37,000 a year, today's equivalent. She anointed the feet of Jesus. Remember that? And Judas like, "Why are you doing this?" It was a precious gift. This is the same Mary that was sitting at the feet of Jesus when he was at the house. This is the same Mary that's with Martha here when her brother is sick, Lazarus. Therefore his sister sent unto him, saying, "Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick." And Jesus heard that. He said, "The sickness is not unto death, but to glorify God, and the Son of God, that he might be glorified thereby." Verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister, which was who? Mary. And he loved Lazarus. When he had heard therefore that he was sick, he abode 2 days, still in the same place where he was. So Jesus knew what was going to happen, but it was a test of their faith as well. But I want you to take me down to verse number 19. "And many of the Jews came to Mary and Martha to comfort them concerning their brother. He died. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. So you get the picture? The position of Mary then, as we look in comparison to the last story. Last story, she was sitting at the feet of Jesus. This story, where's she sitting at? The Bible says she stayed in the house, right? Mary's in mourning. Her brother had died. Martha, the same Martha that was cumbered about at the house serving people and was busy, now she's up on her feet, and her disposition is that she's moving and she's going to Jesus. And then you see down here, then said Mary to Jesus, verse 21, Lord, if thou had been here, my brother had not died. Do you see the difference between Mary and Martha? Mary's mourning at the house. Martha goes to Jesus in the taxi. I call Martha the if only Christian. The if only Christian. Well, God, if you'd only been here, my brother had not died. Lord, if you had been here, you could have stopped it. God, if only God would give me a job. If only, Christian. If only the Lord would assign me to another unit. If only the Lord would help me get off this island of Oahu. If only God would heal my mother. If only I could get promoted. If only God would give me more money for these gifts I had to purchase on Christmas out of Amazon Prime. If only the Lord had been there. My brother wouldn't have died, Lord. If only, Christian. And she wasn't afraid to say it either. Now she kind of qualified it a little bit and backed herself up in the next verse. She tries to redeem herself. Says, I know that even now whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it to thee. But what she needs to do at this point is she needs to stop, sit, and listen. Say that with me. Stop, sit, and listen. What does Jesus do? Verse number 23, he says this. Jesus said to her, thy brother shall rise again. Thy brother shall rise again. What a promise. And to me, that would have been the end of it. That didn't stop Martha, because she just couldn't shut her mouth. Martha said to him, verse 24, I know that he shall rise in the resurrection at the last day. I can imagine Jesus becoming impatient himself. It's like, is she not getting it? And Jesus looked at her, and emphatically he said one of the things that's resonated around the world. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. Are you with me? And surely, for the second time, that would have shut her up. But it didn't. Verse 27. Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art Christ. And she goes on and on and on. And then finally, here Jesus shows up. And the shortest verse in the Bible, John 11:35, you find him crying. It says Jesus wept. He wasn't weeping, ladies and gentlemen, because Lazarus was dead. He's the resurrection and life. He wasn't weeping because, his relative had passed away. He was weeping because of the unbelief of the people. And mainly, I'm going to put it to Martha on this one. He was weeping because of her unbelief in him. She should have stopped, sat, said in verse 38 to take away the stone. And surely, Spencer, you would think that, hey, by taking away the stone, that would have shut her up. He's going to resurrect Lazarus. But here comes Martha jumping in again, opens her mouth and said, oh, but Lord, he's been dead for all this time. Now he stinks. You don't want to take away the stone. Martha, will you just shut up for a little bit and let Jesus do his thing? Are you with me? Stop. Be silent. Sit. Stop speaking. Listen to the Master, and he'll work it all out. And I'm preaching to myself here. Brian Hargis, you need to stop. Quit coming up with your pace plan, your primary, your alternate, your contingency, and emergency. Well, if this happens, then I'll do this. And if they do this, then I'll do. We just stop. Sit and listen to what God has to say. Wow, that's powerful. I brought some grenades with me today. These are stress grenades. And as an example, use these. I use these with couples that I counsel. You can throw it at each other too, if you like. So I'm not going to be able to pass them all out, but you definitely need one, right? You come get one after the service. So these stress grenades, they just remind us not to blow up. And what I do with this is that when I have couples in and I counsel them, I say, okay, this is your stress wall. So when you have the object, what you do, you have the stress grenade, then you have the privilege to talk. You can't. All you can do is listen. He's like, I'm okay with that. That's what I do anyways. You listen, and then when you're done speaking, you hand it to him. And now you talk and relay the message, convey the message back. But you can't speak. You can't speak. You can only listen. So when one person's speaking, the other person has to be quiet and not interrupt, not talk over. That way you can learn how to have effective communication. And you relay the message back. Before you know it, couples communicate pretty effectively. And that works for about 2 conversations. And they have to come see me the next week because that's somewhere they end up throwing a grenade at each other and getting mad and saying a few choice Christian words. But it's more healthy communication. What they teach me is that, I can think about this, and with this thing, I can use this to just stop, to be still, to sit, to be silent, and give this over to God so He can talk to me. And all I can do at that point is listen. I can't interrupt. I can't speak over. I can't interject. I can't try to get my way. I can just listen. And the next thing to do is, like Mary, is really to respond. To do what Jesus the Master says. Are you getting it? Have I driven it low enough to like, all right, preacher, I got it now. Go on. So the next slide, in my last slide, is this. Actually, I have one more after this. Listen, be a sponge. And the last slide, we'll go to the last one. When you listen, like Mary at the feet of Jesus, she just soaked in those words. I think Martha was a little jealous because she knew there was things to do. And she couldn't rest until things were done, things were put away, people were served, trash was taken out. She couldn't allow herself to rest until she knew that everything was taken care of. But here's the deal. By the time things are taken care of, the Master's leaving and you're going to miss it all. So sometimes you just need to stop, sit, listen. And while we're listening, just to soak in like a sponge what Jesus has to say. That's the beauty of coming to church here. The question is this on this slide. What does God expect from you this Christmas? Does He want you to be cumbered about with chaos? Do you think God wants you to live with stress and anxiety and to be like Martha, busy and without rest, troubled about many things? Do you think God wants you to be too busy to see His work in our congregation, our chapel, in your area, in your life, in your children? Are you too busy to guide and lead and direct and encourage and teach their children about the Christ of Christmas and why we're doing what we're doing for? Your challenge then, I give you this. It's real simple. Say this with me. Stop. Shut up. Look at the person next to you and say, shut up. Right here. I'll make it politically correct. Please be quiet. Sit. And listen. Say listen. Say listen. Listen to what God's speaking to you this Christmas. I guarantee you Christmas is going to be a whole lot better than it is. Think about this. If we do that, what kind of impact will it have on your relationship? If you stop, sit, and listen to your spouse, what kind of impact will it have on your relationship? They probably think you got born again. No, I'm just joking. But what if we stop, sit, and listen to God? What kind of impact will it have on our congregation as we grow little by little? What if we stop, sit, and listen? What kind of impact will it have on HMR as a whole as we start to see people come from our community? If we stop and listen to the voice of God, it'll make a big impact for Jesus Christ. And that's where I want to